once again, I'm right in the middle of a piece here by one of my favorite writers, New York Times opinion columnist Jennifer Senior. You know, I said a couple of weeks ago that due to the horrendous nature of what we're experiencing right now, I was going to rely to a great extent on opinion writers who have at their command vast resources to put together their columns. I could sit here and pontificate from Mike Malloy's standpoint, but it would, in my opinion, it wouldn't be nearly as effective as these writers, these people who do have the resources to draw on. It wouldn't be nearly as effective or elucidating as what they write. So to a great extent, I'm quoting with my own comments thrown in. You can always tell when I'm throwing in comments because I resort to filthy language, right? But anyway, back to what Jennifer Senior wrote the other day in the New York Times. She talks about the tactics that were once so reliable to this prick, you know, lock her up and build the wall, his generals, and all this other shit. It worked. You remember those rallies? It worked for the people who attended those rallies. And I had a hard time. I had a very difficult time forgiving, even for a moment, MSNBC and CNN for carrying that Nazi fucker with his Nuremberg-style rallies. Why did they cover that? Very simple reason, truth seekers. We live in a capitalist society. And that society says you get more listeners to your television network, you get more money for the advertising dollars, period. End of story. So week after fucking week, MSNBC and CNN, fuck Fox. I mean, what do you expect from the propaganda network, the sewer? But MSNBC and CNN carried this monster. Gave him uninterrupted, unfiltered, unsupervised time in front of the American public. And as Marshall McLuhan said a long time ago, the medium is the message. Which means simply, if it's on television, it's real. It's legitimate. Because we all know that television would never, in the guise of news, put something out that was fake. Right? Wrong. So, Jennifer Senior writes, maybe there was a time when religious conservatives would have applauded a photo of Trump standing in front of St. John's Episcopal Church, Bible in hand, but using pepper balls and tear gas and flashbang grenades to clear peaceful yet anguished protesters out of the way backfired. The Episcopal Bishop of Washington reacted in horror. Trump's support among white Catholics dropped 11 points between April and May. His support among white Catholics? See, there we go again. White Catholics, oh yeah, that's right. You're the ones that send your children in every fucking Sunday to be raped and butt-fucked by priests, by child molesters? And your support of Trump only dropped 11%? Shame on you. Shame the fuck on you. Oh my God. Oh my God. Whew. Jennifer writes, maybe there was a time when stigmatizing all progressive protesters as invading marauders would have worked. You know, bigotry gets the job done, right? But not now. This bum's proposal to suppress the tumult with the military was greeted with disapproval by his current Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, disgust by Jim Mattis. The Black Lives Matter movement now polls at an all-time high, with 66% of Americans disapproving of how the Orange Ape has handled the response to George Floyd's death. 66%. What about the other 34%? Who the fuck are you? What country are you from? What do you believe in? Apparently nothing. You 34% are people who are willing fools for this monster. The fuck is wrong with you? Jennifer writes that Trump is flailing like an overturned turtle. An historic health crisis, an economic crisis, a race crisis, social crisis, all of this at once is too much for this punk-ass reality TV star to handle. And ironically, what this moment may have revealed is that only in a time of stability and outrageous decadence, which is what we have gone through for how many years now? Outrageous decadence. Billionaires, multi-billionaires, $500 million fucking apartments in New York City. Come on. But what's been revealed is that only in a time like this could the United States have had the luxury of picking such a monstrous and divisive candidate with the intellectual firepower of a fucking water pistol. And when Trump asked voters, I know it was primarily black voters, but eventually he shifted around to everybody when he said, "What do you got to lose?" Well, now we know the answer. Everything. Everything. But Jennifer says, now, let me share with you what really gets my attention, a suggestion that something deeper is afoot. Here's what Jennifer writes. Trump right now is trying to stoke white fears about protests in the street, but he's having little luck. Last Wednesday, Lara Putnam, the chairman of the history department at the University of Pittsburgh, tweeted a modest but persuasive thread highlighting the easy victory by Summer Lee, a progressive African-American woman elected to the Pennsylvania State House in 2018 in the Democratic primary on Tuesday. Lara Putnam told Jennifer Senior, quote, "Based on the history of the district and the range of voters I've talked to there myself, it seemed entirely plausible that there would be white backlash against her in this moment." End quote. Well, if ever there was a moment for a backlash, Professor Putnam pointed out, this would have been it. Images of social unrest were all over Pittsburgh television the weekend before the primary. And the candidate, Summer Lee, had been an outspoken proponent of the protesters. Voters could have selected her primary opponent, a moderate white borough councilman who had the backing of the county's most powerful Democrat and the county's Democratic Party. But that's not what happened. Instead, voters doubled down. Miss Lee was already winning on Election Day. We now know this based on mail-in ballots. And as the ballot counting continued, she pulled even further ahead. Her victory suggested that the white suburban women and retirees in her district were unswayed by Trump's demonizing and dog whistling and his fucking gangsterism. So, I think Jennifer is getting to her point, which is in these protests that so many of us have participated in, it is possible that we're seeing the rumblings of a new Democratic coalition. Last Saturday, Professor Putnam and two of her colleagues wrote that the scale and geographic diversity of these demonstrations were without American precedent. That's what I've been saying. White people, maybe we've awakened. Maybe white people have finally fucking awakened. Maybe it took a monstrous son of a bitch like Trump to wake us up. We already know that Trump's support among white women is sliding. Women with college degrees and without. How could anyone, see, every time I read something like that, I think to myself, how could anyone, I don't give a fuck if their degree is a BS in home ec. I don't give a shit. How could anyone who has a college education support a fascist pig like Trump? I can't, I don't know. I can't figure it out. And Jennifer says it's probably not an accident that the first Senate Republican to endorse General Mattis's views of Trump was Lisa Murkowski, a white woman from Alaska. And maybe other Republican senators will start to follow. Or if nothing else, just stop supporting this monster. You fucking cowardly Republican members of the House and Senate. God damn you. And Tom Cotton, you filthy militaristic Nazi pig. After what you wrote in the New York Times, send in the troops. You son of a bitch. In a recent town hall, Barack Obama pointed out, quote, a far more representative cross-section of America is protesting in the streets than in the 1960s. To a degree. I'm not going to argue with somebody like Barack Obama, but I was there in the 60s. And yeah, there were so many upheavals across the country because of the treatment of African Americans and the assassination of Dr. King. But when you had the Chicago riots from the Chicago Democratic Convention, that was the anti-war crowd. And so many black folk, I remember, I was there, so many black folk at the time said, you know, this is something you white people are ripping each other apart about. We're more interested in not being gunned down by fucking police in the streets. So if President Obama is talking about the protests for black civil rights, yeah, okay, I'll go along with that. There were... Come on, Mike, get your words straight. There are hundreds, in percentage terms, hundreds more percentage of people in the streets who are white than in the 60s who were the white people who were claiming to be in favor of civil rights. We're talking about orders of magnitude here. And some of you know, like I know, because you were there, like I was there. You can see the difference too. So Jennifer closes with this. At a time of genuine crisis, Americans aren't pining for Darth Vader. They're pining for a healer. It's healing words of empathy that have thus far won the day. Trump may have been fumbling with his Bible, but it was Nancy Pelosi who read aloud from Ecclesiastes, and it was John Biden who said in a heartfelt 24-minute speech that he wished the president would open the Bible every once in a while. It's probably too much to hope for, but for the first time in 3 years, change is not too much to hope for. So what's going to happen? Well, if you take care of yourself and I take care of myself for the next, 5 months? If you don't die and I don't die for the next 5 months, we'll know what's going to happen. Because we'll be there as witnesses. Hey, Truth Seekers, Mike Malloy here. While you're sheltering in place and practicing safe social behavior, probably catching up on the Malloy cast, remember, we have a new weekly program just for our patron supporters. There are other thank you gifts for your support. Remember, visit MikeMalloy.com and click on the big patron link on the main page. You can't miss it, and we can't do without you.